Hello, hello.
Howdy, howdy.
All right, so should I provide context to
Sure,
this?
provide some context.
Okay, so my name is Angel Seha. I am a high school student at Lynn High School. All right, sorry, I'm like pretty nervous right now. So yeah, I'm working on a argumentative research project about the future of transportation and cars. So I requested an interview from Vaush here, and yeah, I'm just gonna ask you a few questions about it.
Yeah, hit me up.
Okay, so what are your general thoughts about our current urban infrastructure throughout America generally?
Um, Formally speaking, I think it's pretty cringe. That's my main thought, I'd say. We don't really have a strong public transportation network. We don't have a strong transportation network in general, I'd say.
Okay, that's great. How do you think the infrastructure here hurts the working class and maybe benefit the wealthy class?
Well, the main issue is cars, I would say. Cars are very expensive to own and maintain. They're expensive to drive. You pay gas costs, of course. Any available study on the cost of owning a car relative to the cost of taking frequent public transportation when it's available shows the car is multiplicatively more expensive. American cities are also built to be fairly inaccessible unless you have a car. We also expect and give way to a great deal of commuting, which is, of course, in a system with very little public transportation, not great for a car. In essence, the cost associated with allowing labor to make its way to businesses is being shuffled off onto the worker. The beneficiary of the system is, of course, the business because it allows for workers to arrive at their place, but it spreads out the cost across the working class. I think a better system would be proper taxation and investment in public transportation, because not only would that be cheaper for everyone, but it means that we all collectively contribute to the systems that allow for people to go to work and otherwise participate in society.
Okay, so next question: do you think implementing public transportation, how would it have a positive impact on the working class exactly?
Well, it would make things a lot cheaper, for one. If there are fewer cars on the road, that's also better climate change-wise, because the construction of a car and its use are both massive contributors to, methane gases. Additionally, if we had more public transportation, downtown areas could be less dedicated towards car travel. Cars and the infrastructure necessary to support them take up a huge majority of space in American cities. This is one of the things that makes American cities so different from, say, European cities. If you go and take a look at Paris or Rome or even London, which is, I think, relatively car-oriented compared to Rome and Paris, you'll find that there's a lot more walkability in those cities, mostly because they were built and cemented long before cars were even a thing. But in America, having lots of cars means you need wide roads, places people can't walk freely. You need parking lots in downtown, which takes up an enormous amount of space. They're not highly taxable land either, which means that the city loses money on what's otherwise prime real estate. They make everything uglier. They decrease the density of attractions people might otherwise enjoy. In essence, car infrastructure has made cities almost objectively worse.
Okay, so you kind of just answered this already, but how do you feel about banning cars entirely from cities?
Banning them outright would be kind of difficult to do because we're so reliant on them. I think our priority shouldn't be banning them, but making people not want to use them. So people will ultimately go with the routes that are the fastest and the cheapest. Right now, the cost benefit of paying more for car use seems to outweigh the cost to time that you would incur if you use public transportation. But the more public transportation we have, the better systematized it is, the cheaper it is relative to car usage. Therefore, it becomes a better investment, and people are more likely to use it. Whereas the more we spend on car infrastructure, the opposite takes place. The more we incentivize its use. The more we prop up public transportation, the more people will use it. And the more people use it, the less they'll need to use their cars. The less they need to use their cars, the fewer parking spaces we need to build downtown. And that sort of leads to a recursive effect where eventually you don't need to ban cars because they're just stupid to take. Cars are a good way of traveling between cities. They're a good way of traveling very short distances. They're a good way of traveling long distances if there aren't available transportation routes, trains, what have you, that'll take you there. But medium-sized distances within a city are probably something better left of public transportation. And I think that's the majority of a lot of the transportation we do within a city.
Okay, so what would be your total solution and goal to fixing our urban planning?
Oh, there's no one solution. We need to better invest in public transportation because it would ultimately be cheaper for the city, because car infrastructure is expensive to maintain and can't be taxed as well as proper businesses. We need to properly incentivize people to use that public transportation by making sure that it's built along usable and worthwhile routes, by ensuring that its use is comparatively cheaper and more convenient. We need to build bus lanes along roads to make sure that people in buses have priority when it comes to getting through lights faster and getting across lanes faster. This is technology European cities already have, by the way, where buses will signal lights ahead of them, so that if you're in a bus, you're guaranteed to spend less time waiting at a red than if you were just at a car. That's useful. It's also efficient because more people are in a bus than any number of people are in a car. We need to do all of those things, of course. We need to properly incentivize pedestrian traffic in downtown or commercial areas, because that makes it easier for people to participate in local business, which increases tax revenue, which means the city will have more money to reinvest into public transportation. In essence, we need to take notes from other societies that have done this work. If you take a look at the Netherlands or at Denmark, or even at some of the policies implemented in more standard, the European cities we think of, Paris, London, there are things that they have done that just plain work. And we don't do those things because we are very culturally attached to the car.
Okay, so what would be the practical or electoral steps that we have to take on this journey to fix it?
Well, a lot of this is local. Federal stuff can be done at the level of, like highway route prioritization, maybe federal subsidies, tax benefits, or just flat out like paying for interstate transit. But outside of that, a lot of this has to be done locally. And I think the main thing that we could do immediately is we could look towards local proposals for urban renewal. See, very often on the city council's docket will be plans to, repair a street or to make a given area, to upgrade it in some fashion. The city councils discuss stuff like this all the time. It's one of the main things they talk about. And often, because these people are ancient, out of touch, upper middle to upper class types who have no problem paying for their cars and don't go outside, to work their 2 part-time jobs at service restaurants, they don't see much of a need for public transportation. So in making sure your local government knows that, hey, we don't actually need to widen the street by a lane, we need to turn one of its existing lanes into a bus lane. Or making sure they understand that you're not going to fix traffic in an area by widening the city street. Making sure they understand that, zoning out an area for parking lots is not a good way of increasing, tax revenue downtown. There are 1,000 things that can be done, but looking towards what's going on locally is the first step.
Yeah, that's great. So last question. What do you think makes people hesitant to make any changes at all?
People like cars. That's really just it. People like cars. They associate cars with freedom. The average person thinks of a car as a vessel of sort of Americana, I think. We kind of marketed them as that when we were when World War II ended, we were building out the suburbs in the periphery of cities. We built them with large lots, wide roads, 20 minutes away from anything worth going to, and we built all of them with a single or double car garage. Having a car was an extension of the American dream. And right now, Americans are especially attached to their cars because they don't know things can be any different. Americans don't know public transportation can be quick and efficient and easy to use. They don't know that it's possible to build a city that doesn't have 40-minute commute times where you're sitting in traffic the whole time. Americans don't know that it's possible to have local governments that care about their people and meaningfully reinvest in their community. And Americans don't understand that downtown areas are cooler and more interesting with sheltered pedestrian walks, with walled-off streets that cars can't access, so they function as promenades full of commercial activity, and with businesses that occupy areas instead of like parking lots. Nobody ever bought anything at a parking lot. Actually, in America, we have this whole little side business now. There are like little mini boutiques and coffee shops and sandwich bistros that open up sometimes as a pseudo drive-through inside of infrequently used parking lots, which is actually really depressing if you've ever been there. It's a pretty common thing. Like it'll be like right at the edge of a parking lot, and you'll like it's like this big empty dead space with nobody in it, and then there will be like a little taco brick at one side of it. It's deeply depressing. It's meant to be like a drive-through thing. Like, what if we didn't have the unused parking lot? What if we had a little promenade with like a dozen smaller shops open facing inward, you know? But people don't think that way because people don't know what it's like. The average American thinks the reason why European cities are so nice is because of some indistinct, ephemeral, unimaginable, essential quality. Americans love European cities. That's why we spend so much money over there. You know, there's something magical about Paris, something magical about Rome. No, there isn't. It's just urban design. And there are cities that implement the concepts that make those cities so wonderful to visit that have been built in the past 20 years. There's nothing magical about it. You can build those cities. In fact, they're cheaper to build than modern car-dependent infrastructure. Suburbs are incredibly expensive to maintain because there are very few taxable people per acre relative to like a densely populated urban area or a moderately populated dense suburban area, like the kinds that are in the outskirts of Chicago or Manhattan, ones where you have, you know, quiet streets, but the houses are, you know, townhouses packed close together. You can generate like quadruple the revenue tax-wise from those areas, and you have to pay less for water, less for natural gas, less for road maintenance, less for every other kind of infrastructure per person because everyone's, you know, more close-knit. Everything, economically, civically, psychologically, is superior when you ditch car-centric infrastructure. And Americans don't know that because they live on top of a Jenga tower that has been assembled beneath their feet, where if you take away one element of car infrastructure but not the other 20, everything falls apart beneath them. You need to find ways to slowly pull apart the system while replacing it underneath them so nobody's lives are disrupted and we build something better without having some sort of catastrophic intermediary period. And this can be done. You can take a look at cities that have had successful urban renewals. I think Detroit and Chicago have both had fairly successful downtown urban renewals. Portland had a famous waterside highway that was dismantled back in the 1970s, I think, that is now a famous like waterfront area with a park and like you know, art shops and everything, and nobody would ever want it the old way. And by the way, taking away the old highway didn't make traffic worse. All it did was disincentivize frequent car usage, which meant fewer cars on the road, which meant traffic stayed about the same. Which is one of the reasons why adding new highways doesn't fix traffic. At most, you delay the traffic increase by a few years. Look to LA for an example of that.
Yeah, like as someone who does live there, I live in LA, and yeah, it's just awful.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That sucks, man.
Yeah, especially like in the inner city parts, like it's not good, man. It's not good. But yeah,
it's fixable too. You know, it's conscious policy decisions that we can overcome.
Yeah, exactly. That's what disappointed me so much about it. But yeah, thank you for giving me this time on your stream. Out of all things, you know.
The pleasure is mine.
I've been in a viewer for like 2 years now, I think. And yeah, like I highly respect you. You know, I chose you for a reason, and it's been great to like talk to you finally.
You're very kind, and I'm very happy to talk about this. Thank you for considering my word worthy of your attention.
Yeah, you might recognize me as Elton the Penguin through chat, by the way.
Well, I saw you in Discord. Your name, you're a known, a member.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. So should I just log off now? There we go.
I'm gonna get back to playing Final Fantasy XIV at a mid to low tier level. Thank you again for calling. I hope you have a wonderful evening.
The game is very bad, by the way.
I know.
Yeah. All right. Bye bye.
Take care.